Alrighty. As long as my sweet Midwestern internet holds up strong, we should be live. Alright, perfect. Alrighty, well, how's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network Link 269. I guess you can say double nice to that one. I'm your sometimes on-time host, Spencer Presley, and joining me for this very special podcast is Derrick from the 2+ hour long Good Vibe Gaming Shin Megami Tensei retrospective tutorial extravaganza Google mind dump. Derrick, how are you doing?
I am doing quite well. I have recovered from the sheer enormity of that project, and it's good to be done. It's good to be done.
Are you ready to just dive into Yokai Watch next? The Yokai Watch retrospective. Here we go. You're going to learn all about Yokai Watch Just Dance on the Wii U. You're ready. The next big one's coming.
I mean, at least it's shorter. I mean, yeah, there might be some.
You say that. You say that.
No. I mean, I did hear that Level 5 drove that series into the ground in Japan. Like, it was super popular, but they just was like, bam, 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 new version, and just people got big sick of it.
Legitimately forgot 4 hadn't. I forgot 4 had released, and I looked it up. 4 had not only released already, it's already had its enhanced edition out.
Oh God! Like, I know they're not releasing it in the States anymore, but it's just not a thing. Like,
no,
this was supposed to be a rival to Pokemon, and I love Level 5, Layton, and all that, but it didn't do it for me. I played that first game; it wasn't my thing.
It's like sad that Yokai Watch is now just boiled down to the first one is one of the most overprinted 3DS games of all time. 2 kind of in that middle ground, and then anything else, eBay flippers. Just look for it. Yokai Watch 3. If you got any copies, everybody, time to sell. It's a seller's market for Yokai Watch 3.
Who knew?
But, yeah, unfortunately, we're not here to talk about Yokai Watch, which, believe it or not, actually, there is a large crossover, not large enough to make a financial difference to Nintendo, but there is a crossover between SMT fans and Yokai Watch with, like, the mythological elements and stuff. But, Derrick, in case people have not sat down for your Snyder Cut of retrospectives for SMT, or don't even know what GVG is, so I hope someone's watching this or listening to this and just like, what happened to that really handsome guy from Game Explain? I've not heard that guy. What is that Game Explain Derrick guy up to these days? I bet he like died of polio, and they find you here, and they're like, oh my god, he's been working on this 2-hour video for the last 4 years. This is fantastic. So, who are you, and how the heck did you get into, whether it be Persona, SMT, or Megaton? What the heck got you started?
Well, as you said, I'm originally started over at Game Explain and did that for definitely over a decade, just doing that whole thing. But then me and the other guys that were on the team decided to break off and do our own thing, and that's when we founded the channel Good Vibes Gaming. So basically, every other previous member of Game Explain, Ash, Steve, John, and myself are all over there, along with 2 other good friends of ours, Brandon and Daniel, who I feel like we have a really great team here, and we've kind of hit our stride of making new videos. And John's been getting some really good stuff out there, and I wanted to match his release schedule of like basically a new video each week. It'd be nice, but then I got distracted by the idea by Soul Hackers 2 getting revealed back in February, and then I was like, that's an interesting release. You don't see Soul Hackers or Devil Summoner or anything like that talked about anymore. That'd be kind of neat to actually look into the history of. The 2 months later, I finally got finished looking at the history of it, because God, this series is so much, like, I knew it was big, but so much grander than I ever thought. And with Origins, I never realized. And I figured, like, well, I can't be the only one who doesn't know this stuff. And it just sort of ballooned from there. I actually have some good Shin Megami Tensei friends that are into Shin Megami Tensei, and I showed them my list, a complete list, and like, hey, did I miss anything? Do I got everything as far as like on main releases, non-mobile stuff? And they're like, there is stuff on here I've not seen. So I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track here, because if they don't know this stuff, then oh boy, we're in new territory. And as far as the funny thing is, though, despite doing all this, I've not really played a lot of Shin Megami Tensei. I attempted to start playing Shin Megami Tensei 4. I didn't make it past the tutorial because I kept dying. I was like, well, I'll come back to it later, and I just never got back to it. I played a good bit of Persona 4 when it first came out, but got distracted. The RPG curse of getting distracted by something else and never getting back to it. I think I got as far as kanji in that. But eventually did finally beat a Persona / SMT game with Persona 5, went back and played Persona 3, enjoyed that, and recently finished at least the main game of Devil Survivor 2. So that's really all I've mainly played of the series. There's a lot here that I've never touched, and honestly, I've been curious about it for a long time because I saw everybody talking about Nocturne when it came out and Digital Devil Saga, but just never dove into it. So now it's like, okay, I want to check this stuff out.
I gotta say, not that I don't believe you, but when I saw it in your video, I was like, that's an interesting thing that like sparked it. So was it really the reveal of Soul Hackers 2 that made you go like, I've got to do this?
It was. Really was.
That's so funny, because it's like, relevancy-wise, it's also a good year, because like I don't think you mentioned this for it, but like this is an anniversary year actually for SMT, along with Soul Hackers and Persona. So it's really funny of like that, like all these things kind of like line up for it. Because the one most depressing comment, because I scrolled through while watching your video, I like to scroll through all the comments, and the most repeated comment I was amazed by were the amount of people who were like, there's a Soul Hackers too? And I'm like, my little marketing heart just dies, because I'm like, you know what, it's sad that most people probably don't know this, and considering how dead the rest of this year is for big games.
Yeah, there's a lot of big games that it has to compete with, especially like I don't know whether it's better for it to come out after Xenoblade 3 now.
Oh, I think it's in the perfect time. Like honestly, like it's not on Switch, so it doesn't have to worry about competing with that crowd or anything like that. So
right.
It's a month after all the big boys. August is pretty dead right now. Obviously, that could change after the Keeleys and stuff in June. But I think if August stays pretty quiet, a multi-plat release for it on everything but Switch seems pretty smart to me. Especially because, like, everything I've been hearing behind the scenes and everything in my gut just tells me this has got to be on Game Pass. I think that'll be a big Xbox announcement because of, like, all the other things that have been leading into this. The PlayStation fans like me will still buy it on PlayStation. The Xbox fans are there. Like, I always hear, like, everybody is like, I'm excited to finally play one of these on Xbox, finally. And so, like, I think it's a right place, right time. The game quality seems like it's going to be a lock. That team from TMS is just really, really solid. They just haven't had, like, a good chance for a win. Like, and as much as I love Tokyo Mirage Sessions, both releases were kind of, you were either going to give it a chance or you were just going to be mad it wasn't SMT Cross Fire Emblem. So it'll be nice to have that team is being teed up to be as much of a success as possible. And also, God bless them for finally doing a proper worldwide release.
Yeah, it seems to be a new standard after SMT 5 did the same thing. So maybe it worked out for that, or they've seen just how much a Western release can really bolster the sales after like we saw it, like Persona 5 Strikers jump up over 1 million after the Western release. So I think they realized, okay, we do have an audience over here to check it out. And I've never played the original Soul Hackers, but there was something about the style of Soul Hackers 2 and just the fact that being on YouTube a lot, I see people complain about they only over focus on Persona. They never talk about the rest of SMT. It's just the Persona show. That's all anybody ever cares about. And I saw this. I'm like, oh my gosh, it really is the first non-Persona, non-Shin Megami Tensei, non-re-release since Devil Survivor 2 in 2011.
You know what? You're a good person to gauge this by, because I'm incredibly biased just from straight knowledge and also marketing and other things for it. For you, do you like that it's called Soul Hackers 2? Because I think if you attached SMT or even Devil Summoner to it, I think you're just going to turn off more people than you would actually attract with it. I think just calling it Soul Hackers 2, I maybe would have gone with a subtitle instead of a number, but at the very least, I think it was good they dropped the monikers, considering, like, I don't know how much of the interviews and stuff you've seen from the development team. They're pitching this as their new third pillar. It'll go SMT, Persona, and Soul Hackers. Like, this is their new, like, third pillar.
I mean, Devil Summoner has always been kind of up there, and I'm very curious how much they're going to stay within the canon of Devil Summoner. With
it is a Force Awakens situation. Zero knowledge needed for the story. It is still a continuation of Soul Hackers 1, though.
That is good, because I did notice in a translated trailer that they mentioned Kuzunoa, and that is a huge name drop for the Devil Summoner subseries. And it's like, okay, I feel like it's going to be in the same aspect, but who knows how important it is. But I do think leaving it Soul Hackers 2 is kind of smart, because you might scare off a few people. It's like, oh, it's a sequel. Well, I want to play the original before I jump into this one. But thankfully, Soul Hackers 1 is available in the 3DS. And I have seen a few people say they want to play that original game. I'm one of them. I want to check it out before this game comes out, even though it's definitely going to be dated. But that's just how it goes. But it doesn't attach it to SMT or Persona or anything like that. But it also is, if you want to look it up and find it, you'll quickly realize that, yes, it is part of SMT. Or even if you have any kind of passing knowledge, you see some of those demons and like, oh, it's SMT. And already for that second trailer, you could see how much of a harder edge it seems to have compared to Persona. It's like a nice middle ground between SMT and Persona, where, like, I forget which character it was, but they got, like, I think it was the Rindo, like, getting shot in the leg, blood pouring out of her legs. Like, I'm like, oh, holy crap, they're going places with this.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Honestly, like, one of my big detractors of the series, not like a detractor in a more negative sense of, I've never felt the series deserved the M. Kind of like how Halo, for me. Halo doesn't feel like an M-rated game. Whereas, like, it has dark elements, but a lot of the time it's very light and kind of talking around darker subjects. Whereas this one is like, yeah, like you said, we're seeing actual blood, violence, people being killed. Almost the entire, like, half the main party in Soul Hackers 2 starts off by dying brutally. So I mean, it'll be nice to kind of earn that.
Yeah, that I agree. That is a nice midpoint, because I'm trying to think what gives Persona 5 its M rating, and outside of you can say the first thing. Everyone always tiptoes around, like, the girl jumping off the roof. I guarantee that's not why it's rated M. Like, yeah,
like
no, I honestly don't think it's that, because they don't show it. Like, they implement a lot of things, and there's definitely the sexualization part right off the bat with the first palace. But honestly, I really think it comes down to just to Tamara and whatnot.
Yeah, a lot of it is mostly because most people don't know about the process of ESRB submission for it, but a lot of it is basically you have to tell the ESRB as many things as you think they'll want to judge you against. So a lot of it is just sexual themes in the sense of, hey, most of these female demons are naked. Even if there's not a nipple or things like that. So a lot of it is very cursory, where, like, nudity, like, to some people may be more considered, like, mature, but, like, facts that, like, there's not a lot of swearing normally. Like, there wouldn't be all these memes about Ryuji sometimes cursing, whereas, like, it's just, like, it's an M-rated game, guys. Like, you can like, feel the waters of curse words, or you can, like, there's more than the F word or the damn word.
Mm-hmm. I remember being kind of shocked when I believe Ryuji dropped the F-bomb in Persona 5 Strikers. So I'm like, oh, holy crap, they actually went there in this game. Excuse me.
Which, yeah, it's a weird one, but because it's like, I don't ever hold it against it, but it is one of those things where, like, if I had to be brutally honest, Persona seems like a T for teens thing. And that's not in a disparaging way. It's more of just like, hey, you kind of look at, like, it's a game about teenagers being teenagers. Like, they're not ever having sex. They're not even smoking. No one's taking a smoke break in Persona.
They're never going to go as far as the shower scene in Persona 3.
It is kind of sad and funny at the same time that the most mature thing these high schoolers get up to is sometimes hooking up with their teachers.
That's true.
It's like,
You
I
have
don't
that
know.
option.
Actual sex, I don't know. Dating your teacher, though. Now that could get, now that has merchandise potential.
I think they do insinuate sex at least earlier on. Persona
I
3, definitely.
They all do. Well, not all of them, but like there are definitely sexual things they bring up. But like I've always hated it of like kind of going back to the hey, if you're earn your M. Like I hate the kiss, fade to dark, and it's them the next day. Like that's the laziest like we had sex thing ever of like because like you're supposed to believe that you're in a relationship with this person and it's like a special thing spending Christmas Eve with them or whatever. But it's like in my brain they could have done holding hands and kissing and watching Shrek 2 on Netflix, or they just made like the grossest porno all night long. Like there's no in between. Like how are you supposed to know?
Yeah, it really could be anything. I guess that's what they want. It's like it's whatever your imagination comes up with. That's what it comes down to. It's like we leave it up to you, so we don't have to animate it.
Now, Derrick, I was a little disappointed in your video. I don't want to hold anything back here. I do want to criticize you a little bit. Your lack of mention for the official Persona 4 and Catherine porno were very disappointing. I thought that was some real key structures of the timeline you could have brought up was Parafella 4. Was there a reason behind this?
I had no idea those existed, I'll be honest.
So I'll give you a warning and everyone else out there. Catherine is really tame. It's just a normal, boring like, Japanese, like, porn video, but they're dressed up as Catherine K and Catherine C. The Persona one is a legitimate comedy goldmine. Unintentionally. They casted I think, 45-year-old man to play you. He just looks hilariously too old. Teddy's just a random guy. They didn't even give him a bear costume or his human form. He's just a random Japanese guy in his 30s. Someone really should just make a supercut where they take all the porn out of it, because the porn's not funny. It's everything that happens around it. Like, they no joke, did a shot-for-shot remake of the anime's opening with all of the porn actors.
Oh my god!
It's like the commitment on that team was hilarious. We did a audio commentary, I think like an April Fool's or Halloween special one year, and it was like, you think the idea of listening to people watching porn as an audio commentary would be awkward? We were just laughing the whole time. Like no one was in it for the sex. It's just legitimately really funny.
Wow, that is. I gotta say that it sounds utterly amazing that they attempted to do any of that, but I think it also shows just how popular Persona 4 was. I mean, it got two different animes. There is that heavy meme the Chad Yu during the King's Game portion that everybody likes to point out. So yeah, it fits. I could see them definitely getting inspired for that sort of thing.
But yeah, actual ones I did ones. I'll give you an easy question, then I'll give you an actual hardball one.
Okay.
When you mentioned you finally played Persona 5, no judgment here, but this is always interesting to see how people kind of like what finally brings them to it. Did you beat or play Persona 5 before or after Smash Brothers?
Before.
Okay, there you go. So you get like half an extra bonus point for doing that, because like
I was always interested. I wanted to check it out because I've heard it's so good, and I was really enjoying it. But it was also heavily into work at the time. It was hard to.
Oh my! That year, 2017, early. That was. Even if the Switch didn't launch, that was an insane first 3 months.
Yeah, it was just intense. So I would have 3-4 months in between, and if you play RPGs, after that long, it's like, well, maybe I should restart so I know what I'm actually doing again. I'm like, I can't. I know if I do that, I'll be trapped in an endless loop of having to get back to where I was. So I would force myself when I came back to it to just go and remember what happened the last time. And I had to do that about two more times. But I eventually did get through the entire game and really enjoyed it. So I think I beat it because when was Joker announced? Was it in 2017?
December, literally launch day for Smash Ultimate, so December 2018.
Wow. So yeah, I think I beat it about 2 or 3 months before that announcement.
That was like, man, talk about serendipitous timing. That's got to be crazy. So unless you just didn't mention it, have you just kind of, are you like waiting for the right time to play Royal, or has it not really sucked you in yet?
I did try to play Royal when it first came out. I tried to I wanted to cover it because I really enjoyed the original Persona 5, and I was curious about the new stuff. I love the design of Kasumi, and getting into what all that whole thing was about. I was actually fortunate enough to get invited to a preview event for Royal.
The infamous preview event.
What made it infamous? I'm trying to remember.
Well, it's infamous for everyone who wasn't there for funny reasons. So number one, I always like to mention with anyone who did go to that. Were you, by the way? Oh no, I guess this was this one. So the funny thing with that preview event, it was not really a preview event. It was also a terrible preview event. It was basically a launch party where they brought some press out to like play the game. So the game was done. You could have had review code, but they gave you little demo stations and stuff for it. And, like, these are not games that preview well. Like, especially in a weird sense of when you could just be at home actually working on it when the game was done. It's like, why would I, like, play this 2 weeks before for this weird preview? Because all the preview sections didn't tell you anything that weren't already out there in terms of it, and you couldn't really talk. Like, you could watch one cutscene with Kasumi, touch an early dungeon, or just kind of mess around with the metaverse missions and stuff. Whereas it was very funny of like, in terms of being an actual preview event, I remember covering it and thinking, boy, this literally isn't going to sell anybody on the thing. But if you went into it, because really what it was at the end of the day, it was a launch party for the team. The voice actors are there, all of Atlas West was there.
Right.
It felt more like a, hey, this game's done, we did it, guys. And also a very hilariously timed pandemic isn't happening yet world 1 month before.
Yeah, that was right before that. So the funny thing with that with me was I knew there was a party going on, but I was there for footage.
You were determined to get footage of that grappling hook. You were like, I'm going to show this thing off. This is going to be a redefining feature of Persona 5.
I'm pretty sure I barely spent any time in the party area because I was so focused on the game itself and trying to get all the footage and make sure I had it all that good because it was just that's the way the team was.
I appreciate your due diligence, Derrick.
Yeah, so I honestly I did interact with the voice actors quite a bit. And, it was funny. My girlfriend was playing through Persona 5 on stream at the time, and I got to see Erica Lindbrack and had her record a message on my phone, and my girlfriend was able to play it on her stream, so it was kind of cool to have that for her, and that was a fun moment. That was one of the big takeaways from it. But otherwise, it's like, boy, that really does seem to just be a party that people were there and not even focusing on it, which I guess explains about it because I wasn't in depth. I wasn't sure what was going on. I was just like, well, I'm here for footage. Let me get the footage.
It was funny too because they made a whole set. Like, they made a classroom set to play the game. There was all these demo stations set up. By the way, were you on the West Coast at the time, or did you fly out for it?
I flew out for it.
That is commitment in a way I appreciate greatly. Like, I would love... Because I remember actually another fun thing in the community of... mostly just, like, very weird community and PR decisions they made at the time. They invited a lot of media out. There was only one person from, like, the community of, like, the fan communities who was invited, which was very funny because I remember a lot of people at the time were like, that's very weird that only, like, one person from the community got brought up while, like, a bunch of, like, media influencer, like, YouTube people got brought out, because it was very funny of, like, I made a whole thing of talking to people who went to it, and I remember I did a review of the previews, where I covered and I interviewed everyone who went to that event from a, like, what did we learn thing. And I remember it was just a 20-minute video where I ended up being like, if you've seen all the trailers from Japan, you're good. You've seen it all, guys. You're, like, that was basically it. If you want to hear people talk about Kasumi seems great from one cutscene where I walked with her and I gave her a rain umbrella. They was like, your pre-orders are sold, everybody.
Yeah, all good there. But yeah, I played it when it first came out, and I made it all the way to the Casino Palace. I just to avoid spoilers, but my girlfriend at the had two things happen. She got sick with COVID, and we found out she was pregnant. So
that's a double whammy. Damn.
Yeah, so that was where a lot of my focus went, and I had to just do shorter stuff for Game Explain at the time. I couldn't focus on it, so unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it done in time to do a review or anything like that. And I missed out on, like, the new gameplay stuff was great, but I have no idea what the new story stuff is, and I just haven't had time to go back and finish
That's
that stuff from Royal.
You know what? Going back to the preview event, that was my big thing. Where if you wanted to make that preview event worthwhile, they should have had the third semester, because it's like that game really isn't worth it as a second trip until you get to that final thing. It's very much diminishing returns after that first couple of dungeons, because like you mentioned, Kasumi, you never even got to a point where she was playable again. Like, it's just hours and hours and hours of not having any chance to play with her. And, like, you're just kind of drip-fed new content, and then it's all loaded at the end, and there's no way to skip to it. Whereas, like, Persona 3, at least, if you bought Fez, you could jump into the new content right away. And I remember that was a big thing of people being like, is it worth it to go through it again? Because, like, it's not, like, the longest game ever, but, like, that's still a lot of hours to commit. And I remember, because I was, A, I needed to do it, and B, my focus, the way I reviewed Royal, was I had actually not beaten original Persona 5 until a month before I got a review code. So I played them back to back, and I actually also played Strikers in Japan, because that had released February of 2020 in Japan. So I played Vanilla, Japanese Strikers, and then Royal in the span of like a month and a half, and it was so interesting of, I didn't get burnt out, but I wanted to really come at it from that perspective of, is this worth a second, not purchase necessarily, but playthrough, if you're someone who's just in it for the new stuff and whatnot for it. Because everything that's there is great, but you kind of have to have that asterisk over it. Because, like, I remember, I thought a lot of people overly reviewed Royal, with, like, for me, I think they were reviewing it like it was an add-on to Persona 5. So they're like, it can't be worse than Persona 5. When it's like, well, you do have to literally go through everything in Persona 5 to get to the new stuff, which is a huge commitment for most people out there. And even if it's been 3 years or whatever for you, it doesn't ever really justify it. The quality of life stuff is nice, but there was never that moment where, like, a switch triggered in my head and I went, they couldn't have done this as an update. It was like, no, they could have. Like, you could have implemented it that way. But how are you going to make that money then? So I don't want to be too negative, but I'm going to give you a medium question actually before I give you my hard one.
Okay.
Especially given your tenure at Game Explain, why have you not touched Tokyo Mirage Sessions? What is scaring you away from touching this excellent game?
Well, I actually kind of just forgot that I had played it, because I which is kind of sad to say, I have not beaten it. I will say that, even the re-release, because I did pick it up again on Switch, played through it a bit more, and got to I forget her name. I think it's the girl, the little girl who gets drowned.
Oh yeah, the little I forget her name as well, but yeah, she's like the young cook. She's like the cooking show. She's really clumsy. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, I was really enjoying it, but Tokyo Mirage Sessions also throws me off because there is so little overall plot. Like, it tricks you from the beginning. Like, it shows this backstory for Tsubasa and like the whole missing sister thing that you think is going to get built up to, and it's solved in the first chapter. I'm like, oh,
it's
and then just sort of going through the motions of being like seeing the entertainment industry while also taking care of whatever thing is going to happen next. And I don't know when the main plot kicks off. I do want to return to it. Because gameplay wise, it is really fun, but story wise, I'm like, when's the point?
So I'm going to tell you this. I don't know what your plan is after you finish the triangular arc in Devil Survivor 2. Do you know how short Tokyo Mirage Sessions is?
No, actually.
It's literally like a 30-hour RPG. It's very short. Well, not in a bad way, like in a good way. It respects your time for the story it's telling you. Like, you're honestly over the halfway point. That. So you're over the halfway point, and the thing about it is, it's funny you mentioned that about the story, because, like, yeah, I definitely can see, like, if you're expecting a traditional, here's the plot in the beginning, and you're leading up to a big ending, it's a TV show. Every chapter is its own story that minutely sets up the main villain, but really, like, it's all self-contained. There's no knowledge really needed to kind of go from one to the other, and where you're at, honestly, I would just say you could probably like knock that out in like 2 or 3 streams from where you are, because it does keep getting better in terms of the dungeon design, the story they're telling, and it has got one of the craziest endings. Like, you've probably had it spoiled for you, but even until you've seen
No,
it,
actually.
it straight up they bust out in musical at the end. Like, it is just
that's beautiful.
so like
It
it
also doesn't surprise me at all.
no.
It's going to be a while till I get to Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I will say that, as far as streaming or anything like that, because one of the big things I have set up is that I have it so that people can spend their channel points if they get to
Oh
a certain point to
yeah, for
request.
suggesting.
Yeah, and that's how I ended up with Devil Survivor 2. And I'm taking a little break because the next request was Shin Megami Tensei 4. So I'm going to do a little I'm going to do a Pokemon Nuzlocke in between that. But after I finish that, I'll go back to 4 and see what that's like. And then I have the original Devil Survivor on the docket at some point later as well. So it's like, man, people really want me to play SMT even before I did this whole retrospective. And I do plan on playing Tokyo Mirage Sessions eventually, because I have been gradually working my way through the Fire Emblem games. So whenever I get to that point in the Fire Emblem series, that's when I'll bust out Tokyo Mirage Sessions for streams. It'll be a while, a long while.
I'll always say maybe if you get like an itch leading into Soul Hackers, because they are, the more you play it, like they are so cut from a similar cloth, because like using the same engine, same like different like kind of like flow, and especially like with how the traversal and world design has been for it. It is one of those funny things though of like, it's one I always recommend because it is so easy to scoff it off without really getting in there. But I mean, honestly, considering, like I said, for where you're at, I'd be amazed if you had more than 10 hours left. And everybody out there, like, because I know I can never recommend this game enough. Just play Encore on Switch. It's got all the DLC content there, outside of like 2 things that got removed that really at the end of the day don't matter. It's super, super good. Really, like, honestly, that's like the one thing I always like want to just auto ask people who are like, "Where's Persona on Switch?" And I'm like, "You probably have not beaten TMS." Like most people maybe played Nocturne HD, Strikers, or Catherine. Like it's never like, "Oh yeah, here's my completed copy of Tokyo Mirage Sessions," which is funny because like for me, that's better than all of them on Switch. Like I actually put in my own personal ranking, I put Tokyo Mirage Sessions above even Persona 5, because it's that thing of, it respects your time, it's got a really good gameplay loop. I'm also super biased because I absolutely love J-pop, and it's a very self-aware in a way that if you know the industry, it clearly came from a lot of people who were in that industry. While at the same time, I have no Fire Emblem bias, because I literally have not played a real Fire Emblem game until like a month ago when I finally picked up Three Houses.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's not a lot of Fire Emblem in there.
No, not you could swap it out with codename Steam characters. It's that, like, it does not matter what that, like, they could be Abraham Lincoln instead of like Crom. Like, there's nothing like, oh boy, I sure love, like, the only one who's blatantly themselves is just Tiki, and Tiki is just a VTuber before VTubers.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the idea was to be more like Hatsune Miku.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh, okay, that I mean, that makes sense. That's cute. And yeah, I'm so curious how they're going to build towards that idea at the end. But I always got the sense that it really doesn't. But the game is just fun, and it's an easy ride for people to sort of dip their toes into, I guess, what SMT is all about, even though it doesn't have a lot of the themes of SMT.
Also, I just always have to give a shout out to Nintendo. I always am amazed that they had the balls to release that worldwide. Like, out of all the games Nintendo has never released, that's always one that's like, man, they could have skipped that. They didn't need to bring that out over here. Like when you think of like things like a Famicom Detective Club, or like other like little things like that are maybe you're digital only. Like, no, they committed. Like, they had a special edition. They re-released it on Switch. Like, they did their due diligence, even though they knew they weren't going to make their money back on it.
It has its fans. I've talked to people who have definitely enjoyed the game. The battle system is definitely the thing that stands out the most for people.
So, kind of getting back a little bit more to your video, what are we on? Day 3, 4 right now.
I think 4 at this point. I've lost track, to be honest. I think I released it I think I released it on the 5th, so it's been this will be day 4 or 5.
So first off, I guess, how have you felt about the reception once it's been out?
It has honestly been really encouraging just how much people have enjoyed it. Because it was one of those things where it was a risk. Because as I was making it, people were saying, like, well, maybe you should split it up. Make it, part 1, part 2, part 3, whatever. And that way it's not all one, so you're not killing yourself over one big video. And 2, so it has a chance. But I was just like, no, I think having it all in one go is probably the better idea in this case. Just to have it all in one place. You don't have to search for it. Because I do notice that there is a drop-off when there's parts. You might see part 1, but like, how many people are going to return for part 2?
Oh, well, honestly, also, who's going, like, for most people who don't know anything about the series or haven't played them, who's going to click on part 1 that might be 20 minutes of games that never released in the West?
Right. There's also that. It just felt more appropriate to have it as one big project, even though it was just that much more intimidating in that way. And, people appreciate the effort that went into it. So I greatly appreciate that. I have gotten a lot of comments about from the. I was doing my best to try to make sure I avoided any mistakes, but I do have some hardcore fans in there asking about, like, the big one I made mistakes on that. I tried. There was just nothing about this game out there.
I can't believe you didn't know that Devil Kids is not the trading card game, Derrick. I am so disappointed. You know what? It ruined the whole video. When I clicked on that and I saw you mentioning this was a Devil Children card game, I thought this is slander to the 10th degree.
I fixed my script a little bit because I wanted to keep the connection because that was my transition, but it was also the whole idea. It's like, it was just weird to me because you have this whole marketing push for Devil Children. You got this anime, you got all these games, and it has its actual own card game. So what do you do for the card game? Make it based off Shin Megami Tensei. And according to other people, it's not even based off the Shin Megami Tensei card game that was also available at the time. So it's just its own thing.
I will say, when I saw, because they're really... I think at most I've seen like maybe 4 or 5 people like actually bring it up, and then a lot of just kind of joining in on the conversation about it. I thought the discussion for that was so funny because, like, no matter what side you feel on terms of like having like that level of like a error or whatever in a video, the thing is this: here's what would have happened. Oh, hey, it's actually not Devil Children. Oh, cool. All right, cool. I'll put a little note on there, like you replied to that one person on the YouTube comment. Like it's a super easy thing to find for it. It is one of those, like, it's not like it'd be one of those weird ones of like if you got the translation to like New Goddess Reborn wrong, and you were like, and it, like if it was something like that, where like that fundamentally, like, really at the end of the day, it's some Japanese only game. Maybe 5 of us watching it have played in English.
Yeah, I don't think there even is a translation or anything like that. And I was, as long as I got most of the details right, I was happy. And people seem to be like, I really like the comments. It's like, I'm not really into the series, but I ended up watching the whole thing because I just got that fascinated by it. Or I went to this thinking it'd be like really amateurish, and I actually got really absorbed into it. Those are the really nice comments, because I've been making a point to read every single one, and I don't normally do that, but I've been so interested in how well this is doing, and it's been keeping, like, it's not blowing up or anything, but the numbers have been consistent, which I'm very happy about. That's what I was just hoping for. It's just one of those things that just sort of lingers, and anytime people are just like wondering about it, it might come up and people will take a look and perhaps watch it. And there's maybe little things here and there, some details. Like I one of the things I was like, I should have fixed, but I was just so in it at the time, was I said that there were 6 party members in Persona 1. There's only 5. Little things like that where I just have a...
And I think as well, like, you also make it pretty clear in the video, and if you watch it, this comes across, you're not reviewing these games. You're not, like, this isn't Uncle Derrick sitting there teaching you all about, hey... Persona 1, 3 out of 10. Like, you're giving people the cliff notes of here's some history, here's some reception, Let's move on to the next one, because like you said, 80% of these games most people probably haven't ever touched. So it's like that little thing of, I think maybe the longest you talk about a game is like what, 5 minutes?
Yeah, I try to keep it short as much as possible. The ones that just have, it really came down to the ones that just had the most new stuff to talk about, because for the most part, it's like, somebody's like, oh, it's a shame you focus so much on Persona rather than Shin Megami Tensei. That's not on purpose. It's just because everything is branching off of Shin Megami Tensei. Here's the base gameplay. It's not that different.
Derrick, I can't believe you've talked about Devil Children 6 different times. How dare you talk about the puzzle game? Get back to Nocturne.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, okay, here's what was in Nocturne. And Nocturne did add a lot compared to the other one, but here's Shin Megami Tensei 4, and it changed up some things. But from what I can tell from my research, it seems to be basically the same. It's not like a reimagining. It's not the shift from Persona 2, which also did a lot of its own things differently from Persona 1, to Persona 3, where the whole identity of the series shifted radically. Mm-hmm. So it's like why I was able to keep 4 Apocalypse to just 2 paragraphs, because it's basically a new story with a setup and some quality of life improvements. There you go.
Yeah, it's it is like, for the most part, you do exactly what you need to with it, and it's been that thing of everyone who's either seen it and talked about it, like in our Discord or Facebook group. It's been that thing of like, oh, this is a nice just like refresher thing, like have on in the background of just like whether you knew about it, didn't know about it, like it would be hard for you to like watch this and not come away with something, even if like you're very like well kind of versed on the subject by most people's standards. And like honestly, like kind of going back to the trading card like problem, quote unquote, if that's the biggest issue with your video in a 2+ hour long video, you did a good job.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was. I wanted to have that accuracy. I wanted to cover everything. I wanted to not go over every little detail. Like another comment I really appreciated was like, somebody appreciated the fact that I didn't spoil anything, and that was another big thing, because I didn't want to be spoiled, because I've not played most of these games. So I'm like, here is the base setup going on from there. Now that got a little tricky when it came to like direct sequels, like freaking Digital Devil Saga 2. Like, okay, how do I set this up? So, okay, here's the obvious thing that definitely happens, but how do you just go from there?
I just love the idea. I just love the idea of thinking about like how you throw that in and be like, hey everybody, so Persona 5, you're a new kid in school, you die at a point, and then some redhead chick does some like twirly things at the end. It was a really weird game. So next up, Shin Megami Tensei 5. Be like, yeah, you like honestly the less you talk about the story, the better in most, because like all you need is that like the flavor text, like that little intro paragraph for it, because most of it is like, you either know if you're in or you're out, and a lot of them are so similar. Like, actually, another comment I really like would then be the people, because there's always the people who bring up, Catherine isn't Megami Tensei, or Rhonda isn't, like Mach and X is like, listen, you know what it is. If it's made by this team, if it's got the spell Zeo, if it looks remotely like an Atlas game, we're lumping it in there, because really it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Much like how the timeline... Yeah. Like, I even like the little bit you brought it up for it, this is where the timeline goes anytime anyone brings it up with me. Hey, is this connected? They're all canon. Everything's canon. Q's canon, dancing's canon, every spin-off's canon, every cell phone game is canon. Because when you make everything canon, nothing matters.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it, because... And the other, even just branching it out, it's like, well, it seems complicated because there's these spin-offs upon spin-offs, but they're so unrelated that... it really is only Devil Summoner and Persona that have any kind of intertwining aspect to it. Mm-hmm. Everything else is just its own thing. And a lot of them don't even apply to each other. Like, you don't need to know what happens in Devil Survivor 1 to play Devil Survivor 2. You don't need to know what, happens in even
Apocalypse. You can jump into Apocalypse. That's just like, it's another, like, honestly, the only case is Where it kind of matters, but I think goes to your experience is just different, would be maybe, say, the 2 duology, or even Digital Devil Saga 2, where it's these situations of they're still completely there are people out there who have only played the second, because it's just one of those weird things that are out there. Although I wish I could pen this comment for you guys. I don't think anyone will. Ice Strike has my favorite comment. This 2-hour SMT video is just perfect. It chases my 8-hour Bomberman video I just finished. So
I saw that one. I'm like, wow.
An 8-hour Bomberman. I don't even know if I have the commitment to look that up, but I just would imagine someone's coming off an 8-hour Bomberman tirade, and they're like, whew, 2 hours, thank God, I can digest this.
Oh, it's short. That's much more manageable.
The Snyder cut of retrospectives, the 8-hour Bomberman video.
Oh, that is, that is so long. I can't imagine it. How is there that much to talk about?
But by the way, because there's so many things that are kind of like up there in terms of what you can play next, what you're getting in there. Are there any games that you just kind of think like, it's not for me? Like, in terms of the more mainstream popular ones, like, are there any that are kind of out there where you're like, I probably don't need to play this one? Like, I think Majin Tensei is a weird one of, I think more people would be into it, but then just because it is an SRPG, sometimes that's enough and it turns off people, and it's so weird for me.
Yeah, honestly, Majin Tensei is interesting because it is an SRPG, and I do like my strategy RPGs, but there's some wild. I mentioned in there, like, Majin Tensei, I was shocked when I saw it. The sprite work on the battle scenes in the original Majin Tensei on SNES are freaking gorgeous. I've never seen like them be so detailed. But as far as just something I look at and be like, it's probably not for me. Probably most of the Devil Children games, they just I can appreciate them, but I wouldn't pick them up. It's like, I don't think they do quite enough for me. Everything else, like, I at least want to try, because I try to keep an open mind on a lot of things. Although, actually, looking at Shin Megami Tensei Imagine, that would definitely, I would fall off that. And I've heard good things about SMT9, but the lack of actually having any kind of interaction with the gameplay also kind of turns me off. So those are probably the big ones.
It's funny of like the one that I don't think, and again, never say never. The ones that there's no like hardcore, I can't believe you didn't play or don't like fans is Last Bible and Demikids. Because it's just one of those things where it's like, because they were copying a formula at the time, it's like that thing of, there's just less kind of like heart and love put into it, where it's like, you were going to have just as much fun playing Last Bible, Revelation, or Final Fantasy Legend 3. Or like with the Devil Children, it's like, yeah, in an era where there were a million Pokemon games, why were you going to play Dark version as opposed to like Emerald or something? And right. It is just one of those things where like it's an interesting point in the history, but it's never like, oh, I can't believe you didn't play this. Like I think that's why like titles like 9 interest people so much, because like 9, for all of its flaws, it's like, man, that would have been crazy to like see over here.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they decided to go Xbox only with it. Xbox Japan only. That thing stood no chance of selling well.
You probably haven't seen it. There is one of the largest collector's editions they've ever released for 9. It's like this giant 50th anniversary like edition, like in-game, like it's not 50th anniversary thing for it, but like it's this giant premium box set. And it is hilarious because it's a Japanese Xbox only game for it. They're all dirt cheap. Like, it's not an expensive game at all. The other thing that is fun to mention about it is it was one of those exclusive Xbox titles where they basically forced Microsoft to say they sold better. So, like, you remember how there was what was Xbox? Platinum Hits?
Yes.
There is a Platinum Hits reprint. And normally Platinum Hits are, did you sell 1 million? We know Shin Megami Tensei 9 did not sell 1 million. Maybe 10,000. Maybe 10,000. And that's being very generous. But yeah, the fact that it's on the Platinum Seller reprint list was like, someone at Microsoft owed Atlas a favor. They're like, can you just get rid of these, maybe print a new cover on some. Like we're sitting on a warehouse of 100,000 of these things and no one's buying them.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Oh wait, I was looking through my list here. Another one I probably wouldn't try just because it looks so slow. And I'm not talking about Rondo because, dear God, that one. Giten Megami Tensei.
That one again kind of goes into that 9 camp of it was a weird one where I think the weirdness kind of attracts me more than the actual play for it. Like Gaiden is, I like the music. It's got really good art. It's definitely got like 90s nostalgia bait. But yeah, that's one where like, yeah, I'm not really sure what's ever gonna happen with you. Maybe you'll get a port one day. Like honestly, we're living in we're living in a world of weird Atlas ports where I don't know if you saw this, but we're actually getting on the Switch eShop this summer the cell phone only version of Last Bible Special.
No, I did not see that.
It is some company just buys up the rights to these like cell phone only games, and they just put them on Switch in Japan, and they're used to like they're like these companies who like they sell 100, they're like, oh sweet, we broke even, thank God. So when they announced this, because like you think cell phone only game, even like a game like even a game like this is like I don't know like what the big deal is for it. The reception to it was crazy because people were like, it's a game that literally can't, like, it was like a historical preservation of a series that was really, really important. And it's one of those things where I've tried reaching out to them a little bit. They're now like legitimately trying to see if they can get the rights to put it in English because they've had more attention from the West than Japan about it. Where it's like, because it's this weird game that they never got. It was the last Bible game, and it was a cell phone exclusive. So it's like, that's a really cool one. And another one that people never really know about is, did you know that Namco, you know how like, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, they did the Namco collection on Switch?
Uh-huh.
In Japan, it's called the Namcot collection. And they released the first Megami Tensei, the NES version, as DLC, only in Japan, on the Switch.
Well, you know, that somehow doesn't surprise me, but it's also really cool because it is shocking. Like I forget how many games. I guess it was only the first 2, but yeah, Namcot at the time published the first 2 Megami Tensei games, and that is just weird to think about.
Yeah, so it's like, when you have things like that happening, it's like, man, even if it doesn't ever come in English, it's like, never say never. It's so weird of, like, the things that can and like, might not happen and stuff for it, of, like, I'm always, like, if there's demand, like, there's always a chance. Like, honestly, memes aside, because I think maybe every, like, month or two, someone will, like, tag me in a Phil Spencer tweet and just post a picture of SMT9 on Xbox One. And it's like, let's be honest. Microsoft is crazy enough to do that.
Yeah, yeah, they would. Just if it got just enough interest to cover the translation, I could see them absolutely doing that. And I think that's the thing. That a lot of these are just such interesting little footnotes. I think one that people would definitely be interested in after all this time to check out is the original Devil Summoner, because it came out on the Saturn, it was ported to the PS1, and then
even PSP. That PSP port, people don't know about this. That it had a PSP port. It was the first Atlas game on PSP. Atlas West was so close to doing it, but Japan didn't think it was worth it, because back in the day, even now to a certain extent, you have to work it into the game that you have to have that original team allow you to make a version with English text. That's why we never got Eternal Punishment PSP, because it was a late PSP game, and then Japan knew PSP was dead in the West, and that's why they'd rather focus on Golden. So, like, Japan has stopped more ports than people, like, might realize. Like, another one was...
That's because having... At least we have some way of playing both of the dual.
What a cursed way to play. Play this amazing PSP remake of the first one, and then I'll give you this bummy PS1 version. It's like This is the fantastic. It's like, imagine if you had to watch episode 4 of Star Wars, the special edition. Episode 5, you got to watch half special edition, half theatrical cut, and then Return of the Jedi, you watch in the full screen original theatrical version. Be like, this is really sending me some mixed ideas here.
Yeah, it's true.
The other one, because I remember you mentioned it was weird that we got Eternal Punishment. I was actually talking to it was like last year or 2 years ago, the guy who did the voice directing on the first Eternal Punishment is the same studio who does like even Persona 5 now. Like they've been the same company all these years. There was never a plan to do Innocent Sin because they knew the pipeline of Eternal Punishment before Innocent Sin was even out, and they thought it was deemed more worthy to just do the second one instead of the first one, because they knew it was an either or, because Revelations had sold super soft in the West. Shout out to that being a KA game. I always think that's hilarious. Oh
my god.
And they were like, it wasn't even because of the content, because some people think maybe because of the Hitler thing or the Nazi. It literally was just like they had so little faith in it. They were like, just give them the ending, because there's a higher chance of us just doing one and not two. They were like, there's a higher chance of us going back and, like, maybe if 2 sold well, they'd go back and do Innocent Sin. But it just never it was always that kind of, it sold good enough, but never enough to, like, go back and, like, they weren't like Square. Square was, like, after Final Fantasy VII, they were like, fuck yeah, bring it all over. You want to get Chrono Trigger? You want to get, like, you want to get Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? We'll bring them all. Who cares? Like, Atlas was like, every release was, like, a just enough to fund the next one. So they were always were playing catch up with themselves, and even now, because like, hey, I'd love to play Shin Megami Tensei 2 legally. Too bad.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting trip down memory lane to see where it started, because it's fascinating to see how many elements were there from the beginning, and honestly, in that aspect, they probably did make the right decision to just start with Eternal Punishment, because you get that revelation of like what happened at the end of Innocent Sin. So
yeah, and I think like outside of a few cases like with SMT2, they've always made sense. My thing is, I've always, when I find out these like information, I'm always like, why don't you just tell people that? Like, it kind of goes back to the Mother 3 thing. Like, I bet you people would be a lot more quiet about Mother if Nintendo just came out and said, guys, here's why. Here's why. Yeah. Just that's it. Just tell them why. They'll shut up eventually. Like, for the most part, people just don't know. And if you don't know, you'll just lead to endless years of speculation of like, I promise you guys, no one's been working on this English patch of Eternal Punishment PSP for 10 years. Maybe it's going to come out on the new backwards compatible PS Plus? Most likely, probably not.
No, definitely not.
But, Derrick, I got a couple of questions if I can keep you hostage until we burn through a couple of these. You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Alright. We will do YouTube first, because everyone on YouTube is very handsome and beautiful for being here.
Ooh,
our first one comes from Harrison Wally, who says, holy cow, so awesome. I was wondering if you had seen the video. This would be very exciting for me. And, let's see here. I wanted to know your personal stance on the strategy titles, such as Devil Survivor. And I thought, since you literally just finished Devil Survivor 2, the original campaign, where are you at in terms of the Devil Survivor fandom?
I'm actually, it's going up there, because I started out not sure, because it kind of suffered from the same thing as Tokyo Mirage Sessions, where we're working towards a task, but I don't know why I'm working towards that task. And in the end, it's just like, well, we're trying to survive. But once it all came together and the big revelation happened, it was like, oh, okay. And even before that, the gameplay had just sort of clicked. The skill cracking, getting your team set up, the fusions, it all, I think it reached a point where it's just like, okay, I'm just really into this, and getting more into the Fate system. Devil Survivor, I think, is probably one of the easier SMT games to get into.
Price wise aside, that's I think horrifyingly expensive.
If get it digitally, if you have the chance, but before it goes away, if you have any interest in Devil Survivor from that video, look, get it off the eShop before it goes away.
Not to be Mr. Pluggy Plug, but I think people just always miss this one a lot. I did a video on it forever ago, but I always recommend people, if you like Devil Survivor 2, to check out a video I did about the European release. It was one of the first and only, like, it was kickstarted, but without Kickstarter. The publisher literally had to tell fans, we cannot afford to release a DS game in 2012. So if you want this, because remember, like, even though it wasn't a region lock system, it was just like, hey, if you want this on there, because Europe never even got Devil Survivor 1, they only got overclocked. So they got overclocked on 3DS first, and then Devil Survivor 2 on DS after. And there was only, like, 2,000 copies made. It's like one of the rarest DS games of all time, because in Europe you can have way small print runs, but most people don't really think about that, because when you don't think of like a game that's been printed in Japan and then America and then Europe, you don't really think of that. But like in terms of actual numbers, it was like one of the last big ones, because in America there was some other game I always forget that was actually kickstarted, but that one, the dev is still selling them out of his garage. He has like 5,000 copies.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Alice says, what is your favorite entry so far, and do you have any favorite characters?
I mean, because I don't have a wide breadth of games I've played, I'd probably still put Persona 5 as my favorite. It just really nails the gameplay. It sucks you into the story, despite its issues. But I enjoyed all the characters from that as well. Honestly, one of the most addicting experiences I've had with SMT was Persona 4 dancing all night. I'd be up till like 3 a.m. on my PS Vita, just playing, like actually trying to get the songs down. And I don't really get into rhythm games that often, so that was a weird experience for me. As far as characters, the standout characters, I enjoy my Makoto from Persona 5. I like Yukari, because of Persona 3 dancing, even before I played Persona 3, really like Yukari from Persona 3. And then recently from Devil Survivor 2, it's all down to the voice delivery, but I'm blanking on his name, Daichi's voice actor just sells Daichi's
Oh
character.
yeah, oh man, yeah. It's by the way, if you ever want a really big whiplash, there is a completely different cast for Devil Survivor 2 for the anime, and it is a choice.
I've heard it's not great.
It is interesting for history. That's what I would say. But Derrick, I gotta say, you've passed the secret test of I judge all guests on, and sometimes it's a little more obvious now, but you passed this with flying colors. You've played not only Dancing All Night, but you also have a Vita that you played it on. So you've won all the cool points necessary to get like the medal or gold star for this. So I appreciate you for being a real Vita fan and supporter. So thank you.
Of course. I did not get many games on it, but Dancing All Night was pretty much one of the few Vita games I actually played. I've not even played Golden, so yeah. I knew again up to the kanji stuff of Persona 4, and then I went into Dancing All Night. So I see Teddy's human form. I'm like, what the hell? How's that happen?
I gotta say, again, going back to God, what a terrible release time. Whenever it goes on sale or whatever, I think you would enjoy flipping through Ultimax, that Ultimax port from like 2 months ago.
I actually do own Arena and Ultimax on PS3. I've not gotten the port, and the port probably includes all the DLC. Which
yes and no, but we don't have time for that comic book nerd of an answer of licensing questions. But yes, the port will be all you ever really need for it in terms of it.
Does Ultimax include all the story content from Arena?
Yes. It is on there, but it is listed terribly. When you go to story mode, it goes Ultimax P4, Ultimax P3, Arena at the bottom, even though it's first. Because in the base game, it was DLC, but in this one, it's just included. So outside of weird how you are labeling things, yeah, all the story content in the new Ultimax port is all the Arena story mode.
Okay, that's nice to know. Because it feels like you need to have the whole thing. Mm-hmm. To really get it all, and I know the ideas behind it are definitely interesting, and I don't know, General Teddy, I've always loved the design of.
Oh yeah, I was always so sad they never made that like a costume in the game. But you're not a real Arc System fan if you're not complaining about costumes not being a thing because we have 9,000 color palette swaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Via says, kind of going back into the top stuff for it, did you have a favorite battle system from any of that you played? Like, what kind of, like, has been your favorite, like, one to sink your teeth into system-wise?
Um, Again, because I haven't played a ton of them, I've dabbled in a lot of these games. Like I played a little bit of Persona Q2 and whatnot. I've not dug into mainline SMT, so that one I'm woefully unequipped for. But I do enjoy the Persona 5 system. Well, really Persona 5 Royal because it just gets everything done right. Like the guns are much more useful. It has the ideas just down. It's super easy. It has negotiation in there that you lost from Persona 3 and 4, while also having the down system. That works pretty well.
Shout out to the one person out there who's like, I love the hostage system. Whoever talks about the hostage system for Persona 5.
It happens so rarely.
my favorite is I feel like every time you ever see it, it's that thing you go, oh yeah, that's it. It's that feature you forget is in the game.
Yeah, it really does come down to Persona 5 because that's just the main one I've played as far as the battle system's concerned. Devil Survivor 2, I enjoy, but it's an interesting mix of the strategy RPG while also mostly being regular RPG battles. It's a fun mix, I gotta say. Although sometimes it drives me nuts. It's like, man, I wish I could have multiple characters with this ability.
Mac, I really hope you are not joking, because Mac in the chat said, the what system? And it was just like, yeah, if you didn't know, if you're playing online and you had your person held hostage by the enemies, which has about a 1 in a million chance happening because it's hard to die in that game, you could have someone online save you as like a random bystander shooting them free. And it was like, honestly, like, this is how you know they never designed it to be a main feature. There's no trophy for it. That game gives you trophies for every little thing they do. Like, not even like I think there are probably more people out there who have played Persona 5 than have ever actually like any idea what it's on there. Because it's one of those things that's like, it's cool, but they knew that because it was an online only feature, they couldn't make it that cool.
Right. It's like somebody really liked this idea and it's like didn't have the heart to cut it.
It's too bad because you haven't played Golden. Golden has the best online connectivity feature in the series. Really? Of like, when you're in the dungeon, you can basically give a like little like, hey, good luck everybody, and like cheer on other people who are playing online. And if you cheer while other people are playing online, you would get little health and SP bonuses.
Oh, okay, that's fun. I'm surprised they don't have that for 5 because they have that. All they have is the what did everybody else choose for the test answers? Which hey, I do appreciate.
Yeah, we're gonna save you the 5 seconds of cheating the answer for us. I really appreciate it.
They knew. They knew.
Radioactive Cosmic Ray said, "How many rewrites do you think the retrospective had?"
One major one because what I basically did was just get all the information. It was me just researching, writing it out, getting it all on the page. So it was just all the necessary information was there. And then once it was all done, 42 pages in total, I had to start recording it. But I knew because the way I just put it out there, I needed to edit it and couldn't just go straight into recording. So what I would do is edit the 5 pages or so. Basically the next section I was going to record, and then get that rewrite so it was all set, and then record it and then continue that process. Basically, I recorded each section that was in between the like little interstitials, like for this game getting introduced and like this big thing. Really, it was just the excuse to be able to have mid rolls and not have it interrupt my voice. Have a nice little black thing in there so we could just have all that. But that was the major rewrite. But there was other minor ones where I realized mistakes, or I'd like have something written down from the research I did, and then I'd see the gameplay and be like, well, that doesn't match up. I got to fix that. But I'd say one major one with about 3 or 4 minor ones, depending on the game.
That's pretty good. By the way, shout out to. I feel like all the comments you answered were always like very much of like how many. I need to ask how many pages was this. Like, I like the idea of like that. That's how you tell someone like is watching this with a true respect of like I need to know how many man hours were put into this thing. Like honestly, like because like I also make overly long videos. Shout out to my 45-minute Ultimax port review that no one watched. But it is one of those. It is one of those funny things of like I think there people like when they see a video that's like that many hours, they like think like this is gonna take 3 months of your life, and it's like depending on how you edit, it is one of those things. But like for the most part, you're not sourcing footage; it's mostly lining things up with what you're talking about and editing and other things for it, because it is like realistic. Because like there are sometimes like I'll see people who do like videos like that on a weekly basis and just churn them out, and like that's their thing. So it is just one of those things of like it is long, but it is one of those things where honestly, like when I do a really long video, the longest one is me editing out all of my bad takes. Like that's the thing that takes longer than video editing sometimes.
that could definitely wear you down. That's why I tried to split it up as much as possible, so I wasn't doing all of one thing, all of the next thing, all of that. I just was constantly going back and forth between, all right, let's edit the script for this part. Okay, let's record this section. That way I can edit the audio. And hey, I need to download this footage. And because how long SMT is, I got to download like an hour-long part. So while I'm waiting on that to download, I could just start editing the audio for that section and then go back to the video editing and just constantly throwing things back and forth. And it's I was only working with a few hours a day because I split my time at home with my partner, and like I let her get her work stuff done while I watch my son, and then she switches over and takes care of that, and I'd work into the night once he was asleep to try to get more done. So the whole thing from conception to finishing took about 2.5 months.
It's it's still just got to be nice, like once you had that thing of like, because even seeing your little Twitter updates was fun. I'm just like, I've got like I remember like talking to someone like I don't know how I could look at a video the way you were tweeting about it of like I've got 20% left. I'm like I don't know how much percent I'm at until it's uploaded. I'm like the percentage could be I'm 50% done or I'm 5% done, because like I never have any real idea how many stupid hours I'm going to put into a project till it's just done. Because hey, I've had sometimes I'll whip up a thumbnail in 5 minutes, and then sometimes I'll spend 45 minutes on a thumbnail because I'm stupid.
I had so many variations of this thumbnail. We workshopped this thing to death just to try to figure out the right thing, like which character should go on there. It really came down to just one. I knew Demi-Fiend, I knew Joker, I knew Jack Frost and Pixie to represent the demons. But I knew the background was going to be the SMT logo, but the blue gradient on the sides, that came from a friend offering up a suggestion, and then it's like, what female character? Well, I could use Ringo, but she's new, so I don't know. I want to have the whole.
Who's the green chick?
Yeah, got that. It's like she's new, but it's also like I need to represent that I'm covering all of it, so I need an older character. So, do I go with Catherine? Well, she's not technically Persona, and I know people might give me heck for that, but it also has the sex appeal that sometimes gets people to click on it. So
that is honestly, that's really funny. You ended up doing it that way without knowing, like I mentioned earlier, of like how with Shin Megami Tensei you have the 3 pillars on your thing. You have Soul Hackers, you have SMT, and you have Persona.
Yeah, and that's the thing I ultimately ended up on, because I was looking at Reiko Reiho from original Devil Summoner on there, but the art didn't quite match up. I also had the female character from the first Devil Children game just to throw people off. I was like, what the hell? And kind of leaning that way just because it was so different, but the art style just didn't fit enough. Like
there are moments where like it's that thing of, can I find it, and is it like aesthetically pleasing? Because I remember I did a who developed the ports video, and there was one for Nocturne, Catherine, Persona 4 Golden, and probably something else I'm forgetting, and it was all of these Sojima arts, and then I had Nocturne. which doesn't look anything like any of those other games for it. But then I remembered in the DLC for Apocalypse, Soejima actually did do a drawing of Demi-Fiend, and I used that one, and it was like, oh yeah, like that, because that way, like, it lined up and it all kind of had that similar thing, even though it is so aesthetically different. Where I think this one actually works really well is, like, you have those 3 different eras, those 3 different art styles where they all complement each other, but you know they're distinct in their different series.
Yeah, I was like, oh, thank God I remembered Nemissa.
Man, speaking of the clickbait appeal, that's Nemissa all the way.
Yeah.
Number one Lebanon fan wanted to ask, do you think there is a chance SMT 1 and 2 ever get a remaster?
I don't know. They're so linked to each other. They're 5 did really well, but it's not doing like Persona 5 numbers. So I don't like. It's definitely doing. I'm sure Atlas is very pleased with how it did, but I'm not sure that's enough for them to go back and think, let's completely rework how SMT 1 and 2 worked to make it a thing. Because let's be honest, you'd have to give it almost a Final Fantasy VII remake treatment to make it palatable to modern sensibilities.
Oh, I like that you go there. I was even thinking a pixel remaster was impossible. Oh yeah, doubly so at that point.
Yeah, that's where I went, because like, well, you have to modernize it in some way, and I like, you could do the pixel remaster idea, but it is so different from what people are used to. Getting into that first person exploration, I think, is a big barrier for at that point. Maybe, I don't know.
It's a weird one, because you're appealing to 2 different camps of people who just want it in its most pure form. Because I remember when the iOS port came out, I don't even know if you remember that, Atlas Japan made iOS ports of SMT 1, 2, and IF, and they are not even the original versions. They're not even the PlayStation versions. They're the GBA version emulated. And I remember people being mad that it was the GBA version. It was like, why can't it be like the good or the original version? So it's that thing of, you're going to be fighting with a lot of people there, and then there will just be the people who are like, just make it playable. Like, not make it playable, like, make it more modern. Like, give it modern sensibilities.
Yeah, and I think if they gave it modern sensibilities, you could technically get that sort of idea. Honestly, it'd be really funny to me if they re-released Shin Megami Tensei If and just called it Persona 0.
Oh my god, they would have to know that would almost be like when I talked to when I talked to Lena, who did the IGN review for SMT5. I remember when I talked to her, that was so funny. I'd be like, you didn't know? Like, you didn't know that comparison's just like, it's argument bait? Like, no idea. I had no idea at all. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
so even though we assume that's the thing, you're like, oh, you've got to know that's a bad idea. It's so fucked up. I could see it. Their June announcement. Shin Megami Tensei presents Persona 0 Origins.
I mean, to be fair to them, they have not included the characters from SMT If in the Persona celebration, so I think they know that much at least.
Oh my gosh. Chiaki Fam says, Derrick, out of all of the SMT games out there, which one do you want to see re-released or ported to new consoles first?
Oh boy. I mean, probably the one that I'm the most interested in trying out personally, just because it seemed the most fascinating, and it's probably because it's just so different. Digital Devil Saga. I think that has the best chance of, like, it doesn't have the negotiation system. It plays a little bit more like a traditional RPG while still having that SMT flair. I think that one might have the best chance of, like, a re-release catching people's attention. So, plus I just want to check it out because it seems so interesting.
I don't know how I've talked to you this long, and I don't think I've asked this for it. Have you touched or played much of 5? Oh, sorry, SMT5.
No, I haven't. I wanted to pick it up, but I just didn't get a chance to.
I would love to know because it is so different in so many ways. I would love to know what you think of it for it, because yeah, it is. It's such a weird thing. I was gonna save this one for last, but I can kind of now ask you, since you haven't really played it too much. Ren the Demi Fruitcake says, by the way, what a great name.
Yeah, seriously.
similarly to how Nocturne ushered in a new era for SMT, how do you think 5 will do that? Like, do you, not how do you think, but do you think 5 is going to lead to a new era of games trying to be like it? Because obviously, Soul Hackers is not. It's not open world. It is clearly that being its own sort of thing for it. So, from what you know, like, A, do you think we're going to see games evolving that open world Unreal Engine 4 development template, or like, do you think it's keeping its own thing?
I think Atlas will build off that, but I don't think it's going to influence anybody else. It sold 1 million. It did great, but it also is not stuck in the popular consciousness in the same way as Persona 5. Like, it did very well. Great for SMT. It's a great stepping stone.
We set the bar real low, guys. We put it real. It was like, guys, you've got to beat 100,000, and like, we got it. Don't worry, Chief. Just throw it on the Switch, and we'll do the same. Because it's like that thing of like, if you're a Switch exclusive and you don't sell 1 million, something was wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it has that interest in there, and I think from everything I understand from people playing it, they love the gameplay. It's the story that didn't quite click with them. That they have issues with that, and I think I think that's the biggest roadblock for SMT to becoming as popular as Persona. They need characters. They don't have. I hear SMT4 has better characters. They stand out to people, but they don't stand out in the same way as, you know, the Persona, any Persona. Like, people remember even back to 2, because they just have these distinct personalities. And you look at most RPGs, people like the battle system. They'll talk about the battle system on hardcore sides, but it's the characters and story that they come back to. And SMT, from everything that I've researched and seen, has interesting ideas. They play with interesting concepts, but the stories don't always come together in a satisfying way that people will remember. It's a fun experience.
It's never there's not that moment of like, even with like something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, even if you beat that game, whether you loved the ending or you hated it, it's kind of like, I know why. But with like something like SMT5, there are people out there, like so many, who are like, where's the story? Where were the characters and blah blah blah? Where, like, for me, it's like, I loved the story. I thought the characters did such a great job, like in terms of like how they just represented them. Like, my whole thing was I just wanted more, which then led me to being like, if I wanted more of them and I liked everything they showed me, I can't really say this was bad. I just wanted more of it, and outside of like certain examples. But then otherwise with it, it's like, it is so polarizing, because there are certain things that, like, some people can be like, I hated how this character had nothing, and it ruins the whole thing for them. Whereas, like, for me, I look at a character maybe like a Kansu or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I loved what was there. I wanted more, and clearly they could have had a little bit more there for it, but it never detracted from the whole overall experience. And, like, something about SMT, I think because it's a game that tries to make you think you're making choices that matter, 5 especially suffers from this. They're kind of aware of it, too, with the way the options are selected. Your choices matter 0% in terms of what ending you get until the very end. It's like, they literally Mass Effect 3 it. They're like, what do you want to do? Like, you can get any ending you want. It doesn't matter if you were killing everyone or saving everyone. And it's one of those things where they just kind of accepted it, because, like, that, if you want to make a game where you're just, like, they're not a BioWare. And they will probably never be. But the problem is the games make you think like it is. Like, even in Persona, your choices never matter. Joker could reply, every answer is just penis, and the story is the same thing. It literally never matters.
I did notice that where with Devil Survivor 2, again, I've not played a mainline SMT, but with Devil Survivor 2 is my closest look at having the multiple endings. Outside of having to do certain things, you did just come down to a choice at the end, and you go from there. So there is that aspect, and I do want to comment on Mirth Mauser in the chat saying Nahabino's design. Nahabino's design did go make the rounds. I will say that.
Rounds.
That's one of those things. But you saw it. Like, you didn't. nobody like Demi Fiend shows up, but who really talks about?
I've said it before. If you look at Nahabino's design and go, no thanks, I'd rather have the guy wearing jorts without a t-shirt on. We're gonna have a long, stern conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And with SMT4, I think it's Flynn. He just looks like a classic samurai. It's good, but it's not unique enough that it stands out.
We will talk about because I look back at SMT2. I think that's a design that has held up tremendously well over the years, but no one's talking about the uniforms from IF. Outside of they have goofy pants. That's about it. You will remember Nahabino's that hair. The hair alone.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, design wise alone, it's nice they didn't blow their wad on just that one character, but so many interesting design elements they did of clearly a lot of time and attention put into making that world interesting, making those characters look distinct but still seem like they fit in that world, which was so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're on the right track. I think this was a good learning experience for them. Unfortunately, there tends to be some lengthy lulls between SMT releases. It's going to be a while till we see SMT 6.
It's weird because it's yes and no. There are games that come out honestly, Soul Hackers 2, most people don't know, was in development since 2019. So it's had a good chunk of change of development time, but they're using it's a Wii U engine. It's an engine they've used before. God bless them now putting it on next gen hardware. But if they weren't making SMT5 and Unreal 4, that game would have been out 2 years ago. Just because it's one of those things of they had to bust their heads open, not only making a game in this new engine they've never touched before, but also now developing it as a system exclusive on the weakest hardware on the market.
Yeah.
So I always look at that game and I'm gonna go, hey, my Switch isn't on fire. Great job, you guys killed it.
It is impressive. I was impressed with how good it looked, and I think Soul Hackers 2 has that potential to. It has some really good striking designs. Yeah, the cell shading I think makes up for a lot of its shortcomings in terms of how small the scope is of the game. I think the way they're using that a similar engine but with a different kind of cell shading to everything has been really nice, because it's again, you're taking these PS2 character models you've been reusing since Nocturne, but you're just adding little bits of flavor that make it feel and just overall act a little bit more different, which has been nice. Because let me tell you, as a longtime fan, legitimately they are using models that they've been using since Nocturne on PlayStation 2. Oh my God.
It's Pokemon fans, listen guys, stand down. If you're over here, you're I can't believe they're just using these retextured 3DS games. There's a reason all of those 3DS games just kept reusing the same sprite work since the Super Nintendo. Because they're ooh, that's a lot of money, guys. Let's just throw that penis monster on there again. They're not gonna notice.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, we are just about ready to get out of here. I think the only other thing really left would be that we haven't answered. Government Chase says, do you have what you would recommend a good starter game? Let's say I'm Jim Bob McGee, ran into you at the GameStop. It's Derrick, what Megami Tensei game should I start with? What would you throw someone into?
You know what? I'll pick one from each series. For SMT, probably 5 at this point. I think it's just probably the most accessible. For Persona, I think probably 5 once again. That's just easiest to get into. Devil Survivor, I mean, really pick your poison. I think either one works, but that's also a strategy RPG, which I know people have a little harder time getting into. I've not played it, so I don't know the difficulty, but again, I'm fascinated by Digital Devil Saga, so I feel like that's a pretty good starting point as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you really do have to almost start at the modern stuff, because it just eases you into it better. And if you get interested, you can look into the older stuff, kind of like how, I mean, I got introduced to RPGs through Final Fantasy VII. And
I was just about to bring up Final Fantasy. even if your favorite game is 4 or 6, you will never start someone out right now in 2022 and be like, you've got to start with 1. Like you can't just do that to them.
No, I would recommend Final Fantasy IV as a start. Like if you want to get into classic Final Fantasy, I think that's a good place to start. Gives you an idea of a lot of it, but I would never recommend 1. That is rough. Yeah, like I guess Persona 4 gives you a better idea of what the rest of the series is like, but you lose out on the negotiation system that 5 has, and I think honestly that is one of the defining elements of SMT. So something that includes that is why I'd probably include 5 SMT 5. Because Devil Survivor 2 doesn't have a negotiation; you just get it through auctions. Mm-hmm. Same with Devil Survivor. So it's a hard one because there's so many and they're so similar yet different in how they work together. So I guess I'll put it like this: if you want something more plot related, Persona 5. If you want something more gameplay focused with having your choices and I guess going into more. Again, I don't know personally, but I'm guessing more philosophical in its ways it applies things. SMT 5. If you want something more bubbly and light to try to ease you into the ideas behind the battle system, Tokyo Mirage Sessions.
I also would have accepted you just saying the trading card game and not taking any further questions at this time. I would have appreciated.
I should have done that. No, honestly, you want the true intro. You got to play Devil Children Puzzle to Call. The true.
By the way, I'm sorry. Crafty calls me out. If you're all Final Fantasy fans, not even as a joke, if anyone comes up to you like, I want to get into Final Fantasy, what should my first game be? Final Fantasy Origin Stranger of Paradise. I will need that to be someone's first game. Just being like, man, this game's great. This Jack guy is awesome. I can't wait. There's 16 more of these. Can't wait to experience the energy of this.
Yeah, that's a good time. I gotta go back and play. I gotta play that at some point.
The wildest game I've played this year. The fact that I platinumed that before even actually getting far into Elden Ring at all is the greatest testimony I could say to that game.
That is amazing.
But oh my gosh. The quick last actual one from Twitter was Cross Render and said to you, because this also came up in your comments a lot, what do you consider is not, because we mentioned what is there anything for you that you'd be like, I don't consider this a Megami Tensei game? Are there any things out there where you'd be like, this isn't it for me? Like, what's the Derrick guidelines for like is and is not a Shin Megami Tensei?
Like in the listing I have here from all that, or even beyond this?
I guess like it'd be something of like almost like kind of like a genre like, because like I don't think there's really a lot of games that really try to like evoke, even when when indie games are like it's like Persona, it's like you're not really like having like it's one of those things where Atlas has really carved their own kind of thing with it, that like even when it's outside of its genre like a Catherine, it still kind of feels like it's wrapped up in there, like even a Makin or a Makin Shao, like stuff like that. Just it's almost more of a feel than a definition. Oh, Crafty, you're so right. A great Cyber Sleuth, and again, I know you haven't touched it before. Cyber Sleuth is probably one of the only ones where I'm like, this feels like someone was really going for it. Oh, and also because I'm a fucking terrible Vita fan, apparently. Anything by Experience. Experience is this Japanese developer. Okay. They made a bajillion SMT clones just because there were no SMT games on the Vita, because they really just supported the 3DS, and they are fantastic. They're fantastic, like, budget SMT games that are really, really good.
Huh. I've not heard of those, but I've also not explored the Vita library too deeply. Man, I'm looking at this. I guess if I consider most of these feel like Shin Megami Tensei to me, so that's why I included them in the first place. I'd argue for Catherine because it has the LOL chaos side to it. Makin X has the multiple endings. I feel like they all kind of fit. But if you're going strictly rigid with a lot of this, I would say that. Digital Devil Saga probably isn't much of an SMT game because there's no recruitment. Yeah, it has demons, but there's no recruitment. It's so different from everything else. Even Devil Children has recruitment in it. It's kind of more of an SMT game than Digital Devil Saga. Yeah, that's. And then if you want to get real technical, then spin-offs of spin-offs, but the dancing games and all that. Yeah, I even consider Jack Bros because it's a spin-off because it features Jack Frost. All makes sense. God, maybe Megami Tensei Gaiden Last Bible Special because it deals so much with Jerusalem and whatnot, like real world locations, and like that's weird.
Yeah, because it is one of those weird ones. It's a series that's more defined by like themes than actual gameplay. In my head with it, which there's not a lot of there. Like even with the Final Fantasy, you're seeing RPGs a lot more than anything. So it's like it is one of those things of like there's not the Final Fantasy dancing game. For as much as I love Theatrhythm and stuff for it, it is that different kind of tone of like what you're getting, that focus on story, that focus on characters, and different things like that. But I think that all just kind of goes back to why this series, for as niche as it still is in so many ways, still kind of continues to grow and like never really die.
It has such an identity in and of itself. You recognize a Shin Megami Tensei game if you have any kind of knowledge of it. Like you look at it and you're just like, yes, that is part of it. And I did find it kind of amusing as I researched that. People went nuts. Shin Megami Tensei fans went nuts. It's like, oh, it's with the whole Persona aspect, like don't call it that. It's Shin Megami Tensei is the big thing. It's like the only reason Persona 3 and Persona 4 had the Shin Megami Tensei moniker is because of the success of Nocturne. Like
you're right, chat. We should have just kept calling it Revelations. They were cowards to drop that title in the West. Revelations Persona 4 Golden really has a better ring to it at the end of the day.
I think they actually started dropping the Shin Megami Tensei because they think these titles are getting too long.
Honestly, yeah, like shout out to Raito 2. Raito 2. Shin Megami Tensei, Devil Summoner 2, Raito Kuzunoha versus the Thesaurus of Evangelion 3.1.
Exactly. It just goes on and on. And what's funny is that Shin Megami Tensei, when you translate it, it's like, where's the goddess being reincarnated anymore? Like that's not a thing. That's not the common element at all. So,
well, Derrick, I appreciate you for keeping yourself hostage for way longer than our promised hour. That's how I know you're a real SMTN hardcore fan. When you're like, I'll give you an hour, and I went, boy, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna punker down and get to this. But believe it or not, we actually did get through every question. So I gotta thank you and apologize for keeping you as long as I did. But it was great talking to you, man.
No, it was a lot of fun. You get all this knowledge in my head now that's like, what do I do with this?
Can you see how even though by some reason this is a weekly show about one game series, I could still have probably talked to you for another 3 more hours?
I mean, we have 50 some odd games to choose from. I mean, it makes sense.
Exactly. Like we didn't even mention SMT5 until the last 20 minutes, which really goes to say a lot, and that's the most recent release.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm like, and I'm hoping that I can get Xenoblade 3 finished in time, so because I am genuinely interested in Soul Hacker. Are
you doing are you just like may or may not know this slight like plug here. We also, because this was a running joke, but then Nintendo decided to actually make Xenoblade 3. We also like to on this channel do the Xenoblade Network podcast, which is just 4 of us dorks talking about Xenoblade every month. I'm now like committing to myself because I hate my free time. I'm going to replay 1, 2, and Torna before 3. Somehow also fitting in 3 houses before 3 hopes.
How?
I'm at home all the time, man. I just gotta bash my head against my Switch until I go to bed, apparently. But, like, so are you trying to, like, catch up on any? Or are you, like, because, like, it's just, like, it's been so long, especially for 2, that I'm, like, I feel like I not like I've got to, but it's one of those things, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel so satisfying to come off of 1 and 2 and, like, finally get to 3. So I'm, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel so satisfying to come off of 1 and 2 and, like, finally get to 3. So I'm, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel so satisfying to come off of 1 and 2 and, like, finally get to 3. So I'm, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel so satisfying to come off of 1 and 2 and, like, finally get to 3. So I'm, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel so satisfying to come off of 1 and 2 and, like, finally get to 3. So I'm, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel so satisfying to come off of 1 and 2 and, like, finally get to 3. So I'm, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel so satisfying to come off of 1 and 2 and, like, finally get to 3. So I'm, like, I'm ready for that context. Because I know it's going to feel all 3 of those back to back over this summer, and thankfully it'll be a lot slow. Like God bless game releases slowing down this year.
Yeah. I've things kind of just worked out for me because I did a relatively recent stream of Torna, so I experienced Torna relatively recently, and then Xenoblade Definitive Edition came out, and I re-experienced it then, and then otherwise I watched Chugga Conroy's Xenoblade 2 playthrough. So I didn't play it myself, but I loved all the extra information that he gave that gave me probably even more context that I'd have otherwise. And I'm like, okay, cool. It just worked out that I happened to experience that stuff, and I don't need to worry about replaying because I wouldn't have the time at all to get through those games. So I even though I haven't played them in a while, I do feel equipped. So we'll see.
So you're sitting here with the Galaxy brain. You're waiting for the Switch Pro port, of Xenoblade X. You're gonna be like, no. I'm not replaying anything till X. Then I'm jumping in.
Man, we need an X sequel so badly.
It's coming. Look, we're in a world where Pikmin 3 and Tokyo Mirage Sessions got released. Anything can get re-released again. There's nothing's impossible.
That is true.
So when you aren't talking about SMT, where do you want people to find you? Because you've got your Twitter, you've got GVG linked below, but you've got your own projects. Pimp that stuff.
Yeah, I mainly do most of my work over at Good Vibes Gaming, where the team of 5 other guys have all kinds of weekly stuff that we come out with. We do reviews on occasion. Those that we don't typically get early copies, so that doesn't happens when we find the time. But otherwise, we're just trying to make it more feature rich. We have a own sort of podcast that we do every Friday called GVG Cast, where we just get together, talk about the news, see how we've been up to, just see what's all going on. And I think it's a good time. We're slowly closing in on that 100,000 mark for subs, and that feels really gratifying to see it build up again and get all that in there. We have our, of course, Patreon is part of that, which is just GV Gaming, over on Patreon, because boy, there's a lot of stuff that takes up Good Vibes Gaming, so we have to just sort of finagle with the title until we can kind of get something that works for us. Otherwise, I do have my own podcast that I do over on my personal channel, which is just Derrick Bittner, where I'm joined by Brandon Bovia, who works at Shonen Jump as a letterer, and we're revisiting the entirety of One Piece, 5 chapters every week, talking about the manga, and it's going to be a while till we catch up, but that's a good thing because who knows when One Piece is actually going to end, so we have plenty of time.
Well, when you guys ever decide to run out of chapters and are like, we've got to talk about the weird world of One Piece video games, let me know, because for some reason, I don't think I've missed a single one, and One Piece doesn't get talked about enough, but man, that is a weird-ass series for video games.
I have not played a single One Piece video game other than a little bit of Unlimited Adventure when it first came to the Wii.
The Wii U. Oh no, Unlimited. Oh yeah, the first Unlimited. I was thinking of Unlimited, like Unlimited Adventure R or whatever. That one that released later on. That one's awesome, but only because that's the last thing. No, that was the first one that had the Funimation dub, not the 4Kids dub.
They had to cast Frankie way ahead of time.
Oh my god, that was so ahead. They were releasing anime games and they could not keep up with that. They're like, listen, Naruto's gonna have the Rasengan 3 years before you even know who Tsunade is. So just get used to that, guys. Like, there was an era where they just had to call the Rasengan the power attack. They were like, why? I don't know, guys. Like God bless that era of like anime games of just pump them out. Doesn't matter.
Yep, just get it out there. It's all good.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will. I'm gonna get you out of here. Everybody, all of our links below, all of our Patreon, all of our socials. You can find that there. Thank you all so much. I'm not gonna keep Derrick hostage any longer here. Everyone watching live, thank you for being awesome in chat. Derrick, thank you once again. See, I told you we'd bring up One Piece somehow. Somehow I find some way to bring up a tangent for One Piece. So I appreciate that. And yeah, Go watch the video. If you've not watched it, it's also linked in the description below, the retrospective. Just leave it on in the background. Put it. You know what? Go to a Best Buy. Go to all their test computers in the Mac section. Put that video on all of them and just leave them on loop. with ads on, no ad blockers. That's the best way to watch that video, I've heard.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that idea.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, sir, I stole you for way too long.